way that suits you best. You can pay yearly, monthly by direct debit, or weekly by cash or online. Visit our website to find out more. tvlicensing.co.uk.
We have reports in this evening of an unidentified creature.
Come on! Watch out!
It's the bladderine, and it's inside one of them.
It's got to be the granny. Her skin does not fit properly.
There's something about that postman. He looks wrong. No, look, it's the girl. She's communicating with the mothership.
Use the sonic lipstick to mess with its compressor.
So which one is the blatherine? Go to the CBBC website and make your choice.
Charlie Boorman finds himself in uncharted territory tonight at 9 on the latest leg of his journey from Sydney to Tokyo by any means. And we're going to extremes now in BBC Two Scotland with The Adventure Show.
Hello and a very warm welcome to The Adventure Show. This month I'm in Milngavie on the outskirts of Glasgow, the start of the West Highland Way, a 95-mile walking route that's getting more popular all the time. But one day each year is different, as over 100 competitors from all over the world converge here to race all the way, non-stop, to Fort William. And if that's not bad enough, it starts in the dark at 1 o'clock in the morning. Of course, it's very important to fuel up before the action, even if you're not taking part.
For this, Scotland's most famous long-distance walk, it takes a good average walker about a week to complete. But for the runners, the best will complete it in 17 hours and 35 for the slowest.
Going fantastic, thank you.
Looking forward to a nice cup of hot tea.
Also in this month's Adventure Show, we'll be staying in the hills with walking guru Cameron McNeish, and I'll be taking a peek inside his rucksack to find out how little you need to carry on your own adventure up the West Highland Way.
Waterproof jacket, waterproof trousers. There's no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothing.
We'll be delving into our mountaineering past with someone whose passion for memorabilia has created a national collection.
I want to dress up, to feel the gear, to wear the boots, to have the clothing on. To me, there's no point in having this stuff behind glass screens.
And I'll be taking another culinary bashing from award-winning young chef Grant McNichol.
Have you just pick up the smoked mackerel over there as well?
Which one's a smoked
mackerel?
Which one's a smoked mackerel?
This is a smoked mackerel.
Of course that's a smoked mackerel. Of course I knew that, for goodness sake. Everyone knows that's smoked mackerel.
Indeed.
But first, to the West Highland Way. The route starts on the outskirts of Glasgow in Milngavie. It heads north to Drimmen and the first ascent comes up Connick Hill. It's then along the shores of Loch Lomond, followed by Tyndrum and then Bridge of Orchy. Here, the really hard work starts. 20-odd miles up and over the remote Rannoch Moor before descending into Kinloch Leven. And there is a sting in the tail, a demanding 14 final miles before the finish line at Fort William. That's well over 3 marathons, and this event has a reputation of pushing you not only to the edge, but beyond. In this race, competitors experience every emotion.
I'm either really hyper today or, feeling quite tearful. And it's a bit like that in the race, and you definitely feel really, totally overwhelmed at the end.
I would describe it as a euphoric, nervous apprehension.
It's a great adventure. Really enjoy it. Definitely gets under your skin. I think a lot of people do say, I'm only going to do this once, but it's a lie.
It's midnight here in Milngavie, just an hour before the start of the 2009 race. So, what separates this event from other marathons?
A marathon is probably closer to a sprint than this is to an endurance race. It's about grinding out the miles. You're always going to have low points and bad points, and that's when you have to reach in to your mental and spiritual depths to find something in there that's going to make you continue running. And I think it requires a lot of mental maturity as well as physical ability. Your body's also got to be able to cope with the physiological demands. So that can sometimes be the downfall of some people because their body just can't make that adjustment.
There are 14,000 feet of ascent in this triple marathon. That's equivalent to a fair-sized alpine mountain. But the runners aren't entirely on their own. Each competitor is supported by 2 people who provide food and drink. And that all-important encouragement when things look bleak.
So it's absolutely brilliant, and even your own support crew obviously are there to look after you, but it seems like all the other support crews are looking after you as well. You'll always get a bit of a cheer as you go past, and they'll give you a clap, like a hot dog or whatever you want.
Want a wee bit of water there?
Yes, I just want a mouthful.
Just a mouthful.
Pouch.
That's a chilled one there as well, so it should keep you going.
In this race, no one's allowed to use artificial aids such as trekking poles. But this year, there's been an exception made for one particular competitor.
There's one view that you're not allowed any aid whatsoever. So my artificial leg, some might argue, is an aid. And the decision was, actually, it was a leg replacement, which frankly I was rather relieved about.
And not a ski pole?
Yes, not a ski pole, definitely not a ski pole. I mean, what would I do with a ski pole anyway?
Have you adapted it for the ultra run, and how many of these things have you done before?
I've done a lot of ultras, but mainly on high activity legs. I got blown up in 1995. I left the army. I worked for a charity clearing landmines, obviously with some considerable success. I found the very thing we were looking for.
That was quite, well, that one doesn't exist anymore, does it?
One of the reasons I lived was because I was very fit. So it was a part of my life I didn't want to lose, and I've had to work quite hard to get it back. And what's interesting now, compared to sort of 14 years ago, is the way the technology has moved forward. So I got this actually just about a month ago, and it enables me to run considerably faster than at any point since I've been blown up. And of course the challenge is, on a track it's fine. So the guys on tracks do really quite well, but if you're getting a little bit of, being thrown one way or the other, you've got to work quite hard to compensate. But I do find if I fall over, I manage to break my fall by landing on my face. So we're getting the hang of it.
Well, if you've been blown up, landing on your face on a slippy rock is not going to be much good.
Yeah.
But that is all to come. Right now, it's nearly time for the off.
We're actually in a very urban and rather unimpressive start, probably one of the most beautiful long-distance walk or runs in the country. Train station in Mulgai, the midges are here as well, and it's 95 miles of torture or enjoyment depending on your perspective ahead of all of these runners.
Go!
See you on the hill.
And they're off at the start of this year's West Highland Way race. Nowadays the race attracts people from as far afield as America and New Zealand. Let's hope they all get to Fort William.
This will be my 5th start in the race. So you know not to go off too fast, and you know the sort of pace that you should be running at. If you get the first 30, 40 miles, even longer, wrong, then it's very hard to pull it back after that.
This is the first year that I'm doing the full race. 4 weeks ago I did the 2-day training run, which was 76 miles over the 2 days, so it's 41 on the Saturday and 36 on the Sunday, which is probably the most I'd ever run in one weekend, especially going out to do 36 miles after doing 41 the day before, but I really enjoyed it.
From Mulgai, the West Highland Way heads north for 12 miles to Drimmen. In the daylight, it's easy to follow these tracks, but in the pitch black, it's a different story. As the runners adjust to the darkness, their supporters are already here to encourage them.
What you have an aid, you're 10 minutes up on your time.
Sandwich will be fine.
But you want Marmite ham or? Marmite will be nice.
Hiya there. My drink.
Not running past the camera, thank you. Morning.
I'll walk again.
Morning.
It's currently 3:15 in the morning and I'm on top of Conic Hill above the shores of Loch Lomond. By this point the racers will have already covered 20 miles of the race and we should be expecting the fastest of them any minute now.
And first to appear through the gloom is the Dutch 100-kilometre champion Jan Albert Lantink.
Yeah, how are you doing? Okay, oh, you're doing really well.
I'm scared that you are running.
How's it going?
No, it's in Holland, they have no hills. I've missed only one time, but at the moment it's very well. But my mother is Scottish. Her name is Lantink, but my mother is 86, so she's 86 years old.
That's excellent.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Chasing the Dutch leader is a comparative local, Scott Bradley from Fife.
Hi, what number are you?
number 4.
Number 4, how you doing, number 4?
I'm enjoying myself.
Oh, well done. How's it been so far? Is it tough?
Well, I'll tell you, a bit later on it'll probably get tough, but at the moment I'm just trying to conserve it and enjoy it as much as possible.
Oh, great.
Just focus on that side, and you know, I'm sure it won't be quite so much fun later on.
And currently sitting in third place is another Fife runner, Richard Cunningham.
How's it going? How are you doing?
Hiya.
Got lots of energy left?
Yeah, a fair bit.
You guys are quite far out in front, huh?
Yeah, I think so. Timed it just right coming over here though, because any earlier and it's going to be pitch dark.
Yeah.
We've maybe made a little bit on the guys in front.
Nighttime running is a test of skill, nerves and experience. Curiously, it makes the race a social event.
You can't see anybody because when you look at them, you're blinded by the head torch. But when you're running along, you get chatting and you find out names and occupations and what got them into the race. And then at the end, you have these people, strangers, you think, coming up and saying, "How you doing?" And you think, "Who you?" But it's because you've not seen them in the daylight.
Unless you're a fast runner like Jez Bragg, who got the record in 15 hours 44 minutes, so he only missed one night's worth of sleep, where for the poor majority of us, it's 2 nights worth of sleep. So usually on the second night, then you tend to get the hallucinations and things like that. So it's quite a scary business.
I've never run actually through potentially a full second night before. And so having talked to the guys and sort of the more experienced runners, you know, the cold in the second night, particularly when your feet are tired, your feet are painful, the pain's kicking in, that's going to be quite a challenge.
Hi guys, how are you feeling?
Not bad, yourself?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. I'm not running. How's it going so far?
Very well.
Well, everybody looks really happy and still lots of energy, which is amazing. After 20 miles of running uphill, and they've got another 75 miles to go, rather than me.
3 hours into the race and the night is almost over. First up Conic Hill for the women is Sharon Law on her first ever West Highland Way run.
There's not one bit of it that I don't enjoy. The views. Where else can you spend a full day? 4 seasons in one day. The challenge, yes. The euphoria. The completion.
And as the night gives way to day, the slower runners head down to the shores of Loch Lomond.
Just got to be very careful downhill because I've got a flat blade. It's not a fat blade, but a flat blade. So it throws you slightly. So for example, if you do that, you're going that way.
Okay.
So you just got to adapt a bit and watch the slippy bits.
What sort of time are you looking to finish in?
Ideally, I would like to be in under about 27 hours, but I'll find out when I get there. It's a difficult one to know because as you progress, you get tired. I don't know. I'll see you at the end.
Yeah,
we'll find out.
I'll see you at the end. Hey, best of luck. Enjoy.
Thank you. One of the great things to keep on keeping on.
We're leaving the runners for a short while as they start the long trail along the shores of Loch Lomond. But all their exertion is making me feel, well, quite peckish. The West Highland Way can of course be done at a much more leisurely pace. Then there are the joys of camping, in this case on the bonny banks of Loch Lomond, where you yourself become food for the midges. Add to that the delights of campfire cooking and some freeze-dried food. And you know what? Suddenly the idea of another culinary bashing from Chef Grant McNichol doesn't seem quite so bad. Based at his restaurant in Fife, Grant is an award-winning chef who's been challenged by the Adventure Show to prove that outdoor cooking at the events we cover on the programme can be more than just bangers and beans.
1 chicken, 1 fish of the day, and a Caesar salad with chicken.
Or in my case, freeze-dried mush. Today our venue is the youth hostel at Riverdennan on the banks of Loch Lomond and of course on the West Highland Way. Imagine meeting you here in the middle of the field.
The right one. Okay, we're going to do a wonderful seafood chowder.
You've got a lot here, a lot of work then.
A wee bit.
For me anyway.
Yes, for you indeed.
Let's get on with it.
We'll maybe start off with something nice and easy. Piece of salmon. And over here, we're going to just get some of the potatoes on the go. Get them nice and diced up. That's the smoked haddock, yeah? No dye in that, so nice and natural. Just be quite firm with it, don't be scared, that's it. Perfect. Okay.
And then you just want.
Perfect. I've got half of it left.
You
Yes.
just want to take that bit there and that bit there, okay?
Right.
And basically, just dice that the same as a salmon.
Okay.
Alright?
How about there's a bit of dorsal fin here or something going on
Yeah,
here?
you can take that off. Yep, as well.
Sounds like I know what I'm
Problem
talking
at all.
about. Clearly, I don't.
If you just pick up the smoked mackerel over there as well, and again, just the same.
Which one's the smoked
mackerel? Smoked mackerel.
Which one's the smoked mackerel?
This is the smoked
Ah,
mackerel.
of course, that's the
Yeah,
smoked
that's the
mackerel. Of
one
course,
right
I knew that. For goodness sake, everyone knows that's smoked mackerel.
Indeed.
Looks completely
We've
different.
also got some fresh mackerel on the board there as well.
Of course you have, yes.
So we just have the duo of mackerel going into the chowder.
Okay.
Should get nice. There we are. Look at that. So that's reached the correct temperature there for me. Now I'm going to get these in at the start as well, because they'll act almost as the stock for the chowder. You get the flavour of the langoustines, all right? And then you've got your scallops, which obviously the creme de la creme on this board. So they're the most expensive part of the chowder.
Yeah.
But again, they've got a different taste, so we'll get them prepped now as well. So what we're looking to do is we're taking this mussel off, okay? That's what connects it to the shell. When you open the hand dive shell, that's what have a skirt on it.
Yep.
And what you do is you take the skirt off, get rid of that. You can make a beautiful stock out of the skirt if you want, and then you just peel this mussel off as well. So that's actually what will hold it to the shell.
Okay.
And then what we do as well is the coral, we just take that off as well. We don't want that in the chowder.
I love scallops.
Okay, so now the potatoes are starting to soften up a wee bit in here. So what we're
do
going to
you
do
do
is get a nice bit of glug of white wine in there.
Oh, it's come off together. Lovely.
A bit of glass and a half into here, because obviously it's going to be quite a big pot, so we want the flavour in there. So we just want to take the board over, Diggy.
No problem.
Basically we're wanting to get it
Down the side of the pot. That's what we're looking at. Yes.
No.
That's what I'll probably manage that.
No, right. Okay, so nice and slowly, just start putting the fish in there, alright? Okay, don't be shy. Try not to burn me whilst you're at it.
Okay, it's sploshing
Back a
all
little
over
fence.
it. Okay, good.
Right, so we're going to add a bit of cream in now. A good glug of cream. We'll probably nearly use all this.
Really?
Well, yeah, with the amount of people we've got around here, we're going to have to feed everyone, you see. Again, you can make it with a bechamel, which is a white sauce, which obviously you make a roux with flour and butter, and you can make it that way, but I just prefer to use cream. A good couple of handfuls of mussels. Okay, so if you grab a handful as well.
Okay.
Let's not be shy. Everyone like mussels here, yeah? Excellent. Okay, I think yeah. Your hands are a lot smaller than mine, I think.
I was scared in case one of them bit me.
Ah, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, they are live, so you're quite right to be scared. Sweet corn, peas as well. I'm just going to cut a few bits of julienne doogie. Take note.
Yes.
Julienne, not massively chopped. Okay, so nice and small.
Baby fingers. That's very impressive. Watch your fingers now.
Watch my fingers. We are absolutely fantastic. Ready to go.
Glad I'm here.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, good commie. A few tomatoes. Very simple. And then, voila! There we are. Seafood chowder, folks.
Plastic bowls, plastic bowls. Where's the bowls? Where's the bowls?
Sorry, chef.
Did I start clapping there? Did you see that? I started to get all
Sorry,
impatient. This is the River Denon Soup Kitchen, and no mistake. Look at the
Fantastic.
poor wee cells. It's never been fed.
Delicious.
Yeah.
I've been after this all week.
It's very nice. Thank you very much.
You like it?
Delicious.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant. Little bit much fish.
I didn't get that scallop that you were going to get.
I beg your pardon. All complaints with Mr. McNichol over there. And our thanks to everyone at Riordan Youth Hostel, where the cooking's always fine. And next we journey back to a time when ice axes were made of wood and mountain safety was simple. Just don't fall off. Duncan McCallum's looking at a neglected part of our outdoor history that's being preserved by mountain guide Mick Tighe.
Today's hill walking and mountaineer equipment is lightweight, very, very technical, and sometimes extremely expensive. But it wasn't always that way. Now, one man's passion for mountaineering memorabilia is turning gear like this into a national collection.
You're a fine figure of a man, Duncan.
Well, I'm amazed how comfy the boots are. I thought they would be really, really uncomfortable, but they're really great. Sticky as anything on the grass. They're fantastic.
Boots are great, pretty about the legs. Yeah.
How come you started collecting the old gear, and what is it about this stuff that really attracted you in the first place?
I started collecting gear in general, and then because I'm a mountain guide, then mountaineering gear became the passion. And it kind of a lot of things, it overtook me really, I guess, and the barn got full, and people kind of gave me things on trust, if you like. And eventually we decided that one day I'll die, and perhaps we should make it into some kind of a national collection. so that when I'm dead and gone, it stays behind for the nation.
What's important for you in the collection itself?
Well, I suppose because we weren't actually there when these were being used, then this is the living evidence of our pioneers in the mountains in days gone by. And of course, these boots belong to Poucher. He was an iconic figure in the walking and photography world.
Yeah.
So we've actually got kind of a liaison, if you like, between the old and the new. And this is actually, as you say, tactile. We can touch it, we can feel it, and it just looks good, eh? It's interesting, you're walking up here now with an ice axe, not in the winter.
Yes.
But the alpine mountaineers use these all year round.
Yeah.
They use them for walking, use them for climbing, for rock climbing, hooking up and all kind of things. So this is a year-round thing for the alpine mountaineer.
Yes, and you'd store it by slipping it into your rucksack.
Yeah, exactly.
So once you've amassed a great big collection of stuff, there's always a problem where you're going to keep it. Welcome to Mick's Treasure Trove.
From a Scottish mountaineering point of view, this is probably the most interesting, if not most expensive item. And it belonged to Harold Rayburn.
And it actually has his name.
Well, he went on one of the early Everest expeditions, and that was thought to be the one that he had around about 1920, I think, on an early Everest reconnaissance trip, yeah.
So that's an old abseiling rappel device. French,
Well,
is
yeah.
it French?
Yeah, Pierre Lane, yeah. As some people said, possibly even an instrument of torture. These wooden wedges were used, or similar ones, on the first ascent of the Old Man of Hoy, and they're actually still in there, 30, 40 years on. This is a German Army Mountain Troops jacket from the Second World War, which obviously not quite Scottish, but certainly mountainous. We've got Tom Patey, who's probably one of Scotland's more famous doctors, climbing doctors.
Yes, from Alipore, wasn't he?
Yeah. And that's actually the piton hammer that he had on him the day he died. And Tom was killed on a sea stack up in Sutherland in 1970, and a friend of mine who was with him at the time inherited this, and he's handed it into the collection. Bizarre, unusual, odd.
Well, it's not Norman Crouch's, is it?
It's not Norman Crouch's, no, but it's it belonged to a guy called, I don't know his first name, a man called Mackay, and his daughter Sarah gave it to us, and it's based on an original design by a guy called Geoffrey Winthrop Young, who was a very famous man. But what's really unusual, I think, just does the bit. It's got the old-fashioned nails that we'd put in the old nail boots.
Oh,
in the
yeah.
bottom.
Yeah.
Just great, you know. We rescued a guy off the Ben a few years ago who subsequently lost his leg. He came back about 3 years later to climb the Ben with his one leg, and half his hands missing with frostbite. And half up the tower ridge, his leg fell off. The tourists on the top was thinking, what else going on? This little guy used to come to my lectures. He used to do his mountain safety lectures. He used to come every year. And he came along, he said, I've got an ice axe for you. And he's from Paisley, can't do his accent very well. And he said, I'm not giving you yet, but about 3 years later he came along with it and gave it to him. The wife says you have to get it. About 2 years later he came up to me and he said, the wife says you to get the car. I said, what? He said, the wife says you to get the car. I said, what car? He says, there's a car been in the shed since my daughter went to America in 1956, and the wife says you to get it. It's an old standard. You can have it if you want. You're going to give me this car. I never got the car.
It might still be there.
It's probably still there, yeah.
So when it's physically sitting in its final resting place, wherever that may be, what do you hope that people, especially young people interested in the hills, will get out of seeing all of this stuff?
I want people to do what you're doing today. I want them to dress up, to feel the gear, to wear the boots, to have the clothing on. To me, there's no point in having this stuff behind glass screens. Stuff needs to be touched, needs to be felt.
Yeah, so a living museum.
A living museum, fantastic, yeah.
And all being well, you'll be able to view Mick Tighe's historic collection online by the end of the year.
Welcome back to the West Highland Way race. It's now 5 AM and the runners can enjoy a beautiful dawn as they make their way down the hill and get onto some flatter terrain next to the banks of Loch Lomond. How are you finding this race?
Did the Highland Fling last year and this is good. I just love it. Nicer than a marathon. It's just so much, bonnier and just so much more enjoyable.
We don't have anything like this in the United States, so we're glad to be here.
Have you come all the way over from the States to do this race?
Yep. Yes, we have.
I'm really glad you've got some nice weather then, because this is Scotland at its finest, really.
I promise it's going to stay that way.
I promise. There won't be a single midgie in sight either.
Oh, I must have imagined all those back there.
Hello there. How are you?
Not too bad.
Is this your first time racing?
Unfortunately, no. Spot the date. 17th consecutive
17?
time I've come over this hill, so I do.
Why do you keep coming back?
Basically, it's a camaraderie. It gives you something to aim at. If you're the likes of my age and a lot of the older runners, you're maybe giving up the track and field side, the 10Ks. And to be honest, battering down a road for a marathon, it gets a bit boring after a while. Whereas you do this, you get the camaraderie, you get people. It's a bit like a party.
The spirit of this race is incredible, and with all these smiling faces, it's easy to forget just what a challenge it is. And right now at the head of Loch Lomond, there's an extra obstacle: the midges. By now, the front runners are nearly halfway through the race, 40 miles down, just 55 to go. 52-year-old Jan Albert Lantink from the Netherlands is still in the lead, but pressing him hard is Scott Bradley, with Richard Cunningham hanging on to third.
That's okay.
And it's not long before there's a steady trickle of runners coming through.
Legs feel great. Mine feels great. Toes are in bits.
Just try to keep it going, keep moving forward. And hopefully my backup team will have my burger or bacon rolls when I get to the next checkpoint.
That section just takes it out of you. It's just the whole tree roots and the rocks, and you just can't get any speed up. Just throws your rhythm. And I've spat my dummy out. I want to go home.
And leading the way for the women, it's still Sharon Law from Ayrshire.
I'm doing all right.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Fair enough. What brings you to races like this?
The enjoyment, the sunshine, the scenery, the challenge, the people, and that's actually quite good fun at certain points.
You're the first woman, brilliant.
Am I?
Yeah.
Fantastic, thank you guys.
I've now travelled to the banks of Loch Lomond, where there's still a steady stream of runners coming through, but it really seems like the field's spread out now and the fastest runners are miles ahead. The scenery here is absolutely amazing today, but the midges are just awful. So how's it been? Have you still got lots of energy for the rest of the race?
Okay so far, yeah. Trying to eat properly, keep the energy levels up and not let the blood sugars drop.
So have there been any really difficult bits so far? Has it all been...
No, actually, it's amazing. It's went past really quick. It might not seem like that on the clock, but for me it's went quickly today.
Oh, that's great.
It's gorgeous.
All those who complete the race will have pushed their bodies to the limit, but for some, the journey is even harder. In 2005, Fiona Rennie was planning to join her twin sister for the race, but it didn't turn out like that.
2 months before the race I had a brain hemorrhage, which was quite scary.
Scuppered the training plan a little bit.
Yes, but 2006 was so special. To run it in 2006, a year after, was the last tick in the box of my recovery. And since then, never looked back. Even afterwards, coming out of hospital, I was in intensive, the high dependency unit for a couple of weeks, and sort of even going home and stepping out my front door was quite hard. Am I okay? Can I walk to the shop? Can I do this? Am I fine? And then just gradually building up running, going back to running, and then, as I say, 2006, coming into the leisure centre was so special. That for me, I am recovered, I am fine, I can move on. That was it. It is definitely a life-enhancing experience.
Fiona runs for fun, but in 2007 her twin Pauline Walker set the Scottish long-distance record and has now completed more than 100 marathons.
One of the things that Fiona says is we choose this challenge. This is a challenge of our choosing, and some people get challenges thrown at them and they manage. So we choose to do this. Never complain, never sort of moan about this. We've chosen to do this. There's sometimes where it's painful, but she says pain is a luxury for the living. Yeah. And I think that is so true. Enjoy it. It's going to hurt, but we choose
I'm
to
here
do this.
to be able to feel that sensation.
Everyone entering this race must have experience of long-distance off-road running, but putting your body through this kind of punishment does have medical implications, some of which are as yet unknown. This year, a medical team are asking for volunteers so they can monitor the effects of the race on competitors' bodies.
Over the last couple of years there have been a few medical problems with this race. Several athletes have ended up being hospitalised with seizures and a degree of kidney failure. And this is quite a rare occurrence, certainly in Scotland. What we are trying to do today is to take some blood samples before the race and also after the race to see just how much damage a race like this does to the body. There is some evidence that endurance exercise can decrease your sodium levels if you don't get your nutrition and your drinking bang on, and that it can also damage your muscles and increase the levels of damaging muscle enzymes in the blood.
The two problems that concern me the most, and both of which we've seen a few times. One is a fluid overload phenomenon, and that is due to a combination of drinking more than you should against the background of overproduction of a hormone that makes you hang on to that fluid. Initially, the most likely symptom is a degree of confusion, and then if it moves on, you move on to having seizures or convulsions, and then coma, and then if you're very unlucky, death.
What can you do to kind of alleviate that? Obviously, people are eating at regular intervals. Is that as simple as that?
The important thing to realise about this low sodium phenomenon is that it's not a consequence of inadequate sodium. It's a consequence of diluting the sodium that you've got that is normal by an excessive amount of fluid. And that excessive amount of fluid arrives through a combination of circumstances. One is that you drink more than you need, and the other is that you've got this hormone that makes you hang on to the fluid that comes on board. You can't really control the production of this hormone if you're going to produce too much. So the only thing that you can control is the intake of fluid. And the simplest way to drink safely is to drink by thirst.
Drink by thirst. There's not a prescribed amount per hour or whatever.
People's fluid requirements vary, but the drink by thirst I think is the soundest advice. And as you'll see, that we do have weight monitoring available in the race, and that's for safety reasons.
Bottom limit 84.7.
That's the lowest you can go, so you're fine.
Ooh, close.
Alright, better get the fluid in. First time I attempted the West Highland Way race, I wasn't too well when I started off. I thought it would pass. For the first half, I wasn't really able to keep anything down that 8. It was just going straight out the other end. And gradually things got worse and worse and worse. And I got to Devil's Staircase. I was hallucinating, seeing things flying at me. I was talking utter garbage. And when I got to the surgery at Kinloch and I half collapsed. So the doctor took me through to for William intensive care. And if I get this the right way around, I believe that having the liver on my kidneys was poisoned by the amount of muscle wastage which was going through my body. There is a long word for this, but I'm not even going to pronounce it, especially in front of a camera, which I had. But plus I was also suffering from hyponatremia, which is overhydration, too much water with not enough sodiums, and I was in a mess.
Nobody finishing this race can expect to feel tip-top. They will all have pushed their body to the maximum. All the symptoms with these worrying pathologies are very non-specific. They might feel a bit sick, a wee bit confused, their hands and their feet might swell up, but if you don't do something about that, then that can progress to death, which we don't want.
So far this year, there have been no medical problems. The leaders have now covered over 50 miles of the course, and Jan Albert Lanting from Holland is still out in front. Boasting a Scottish mother, Jan Albert feels a strong tie to this country. For him, this race is a homecoming.
It's for me the first time on the holy ground in Scotland. So I hope it will going well. We have a long way to go.
How are you feeling so far?
Yeah, very good. But it's a long way.
Scott Bradley is still in second, but he's beginning to feel the pressure.
I mean, the first bit was fine, but I think I kept telling myself to ease off. But I think I was probably a wee bit too aggressive. So we'll see how it goes. It's touch and go.
Meanwhile, in third place, Richie Cunningham is looking composed.
How are you feeling?
Oh, yeah, not bad. Not too bad. Keeping it together.
How's your legs so far?
They hurt a bit, but it's okay. It's holding it together. So just trying to keep the pace steady and keep it going.
There's clearly something about running that these competitors find addictive. So what makes this journey so special?
It's wild, it's free, it's total freedom when you're running. It's just you and your body, and when you're in zone, as it were, then you're just flying, and that's a great feeling. You don't get that every day.
I always say to people as well, you're not actually thinking about where you're putting your feet. Your eyes are looking at where you're putting your feet, and your brain and your eyes are working together. You're not actually thinking about it. I mean, some people call it free running or wild running, and just getting into that rhythm is just an amazing feeling. And when you realise, you think to yourself, well, I've just covered maybe about 4 or 5 miles and I never even thought about a single part of that. You know, your thoughts are elsewhere. Then that's fantastic. It's really good to get that feeling. It's such a buzz.
By now, the fastest racers have completed 2/3 of the course. Jan Albert Lantink's holding on to the lead.
No. Okay, bye-bye.
He's feeling the strain, as is second place Scott Bradley.
Oh, all right, aye.
You're sorted.
Sorry?
You're sorted.
What does that mean? All right, I'm checked
right.
out. Oh, I
You're
wanted an
checking in?
excuse for a rest.
All right, well, you're starting there then.
Aye, I think I will. Going through rough patches now, but, you know, what do I expect, I suppose? It's a long way, isn't it? Right, cheers.
Next at this checkpoint is the local runner George Cairns from Fort William. He's just a minute ahead of Richie Cunningham, so a fast turnaround here could make all the difference. George is off first, but as they head up to the most exposed section of the West Highland Way, Ranach Moor, Richie's managed to move back up into third place.
It's okay. This section has always been a bad patch for me for the last 2 or 3 races, and I'm determined to do a good one this time.
So with George Cairns still threatening Richie's position, it promises to be a fantastic race all the way to Fort William. More on that later. So as the runners keep their heads down and their feet moving, what about the other 50,000 plus people who tackle the West Highland Way every year? Sitting lonely as a cloud here is our hill walking guru, Cameron McNeish. How are we, sir?
Hi, Dougie, good to see you.
Good to see you too. Now tell me about the West Highland Way. Have you done it and what do you think of it?
I have. I've done it several times and I think it's wonderful. It's by far the most successful of our 4 long distance trails in Scotland. You leave Glasgow, you get away from the city, and Glasgow is one of those cities you can escape from very quickly. And within minutes you're out of the suburbs, you're out in Mulgai, you're in nice countryside, and then you come over a wee rise and you see the Highlands ahead of you, and then you're into the Highlands, you know, up by Loch Lomond, the big mountains around you. It's a fantastic walk, I just love it.
I thought it'd be a wee bit too low for you because you like getting up at the high mountain environment, but I know you're a huge fan of lightweight walking, but what can you get away with in terms of a lightweight pack?
Well, you can get away with just a bum bag or just a very small rucksack with your waterproofs and your lunch in it, and stay at hotels or bed and breakfast overnight. I'm too much of a kind of free spirit for that. Sometimes I want to maybe camp in the mid-afternoon or maybe want to walk on till 10 at night. So I like to have all my gear with me so I can put my tent up where I want, basically. And this pack I've got here weighs about 12 pounds, and that's got my week's camping gear, a week's food in it, so it's everything I need, so I'm completely self-sufficient.
Take us through then, what have you got there?
All my food here, I've kind of eaten half of this food, so it's going to be a bit limp now. A bag, one of these very, very light little plastic things for filling up with water at the stream every night, and that'll hold enough water to last me all night, which is ideal. Right, toilet travel. Yeah. People often say to you when you're camping, and how do you do toilet? And in actual fact, the best example you can find is from Deuteronomy in the Bible, where it says, when you leave the camp, take with you a digging implement. So it's a technique that's been used since time immemorial. The tent here is about 2.5 pounds. Yeah. I could get away with a tarp, just a sort of sheet of nylon, but you know, we've got midges in Scotland. Yeah. I want something that's I can totally enclose myself in with a midgie net so that midges don't get in, and I can sort of sit inside and look out at them and make faces at them. This is my whole cooking kit. Now feel the weight of that.
Oh, goodness, that's tiny.
Cooking kit. So what I've got in here is...
Not eating much then when you're away.
I do, yeah, I eat well. Oh, gosh, I eat out well. This doubles up as my cooking pot, my mug.
Fantastic.
It's quite useful.
And the stove in there as well?
That's my stove here. So a few years ago, people started making stoves out of Coca-Cola cans. And this is a sort of industrial version of that. You fill it up with meths, you light it, you have a windshield to protect it from the wind, and you stick your pot on the top of it, and it's brilliant. Simple. It works very, very well. And somewhere in here I've got a wee bottle of meths to fire it up. What else have I got? Because I'm getting a bit older now, and I like a bit of comfort at night. This is a self-inflating mattress.
Yeah.
And then most important of all, the sleeping bag. And this is the one that I've got sort of double wrapped and everything. You don't want to get this wet. You get a wet sleeping bag and it's, you know, you might as well go home. It's miserable. This is pure goose down. It weighs about 1.5 pounds. And this will do me for spring, summer and autumn. There we go, full kit, 12 pounds. That's not bad.
Not bad at all. That's certainly, I'm carrying a bit more than 12 pounds, but then I carry more for my lunch. Now, regular viewers of the Adventure Show will be used to seeing you on your wild walks every month, so where are you heading this month?
Well, I'm heading for the Cairngorms and a mountain called Bray Riach, which is the 3rd highest mountain in Britain.
Well, let's see it, shall we?
What a magnificent morning. All is well in the world, God's in his heaven, and I'm in the Cairngorms. Couldn't get any better. I'm heading for one of my favourite mountains, Bray Riach, at 1296 metres, the 3rd highest mountain in Britain. It involves quite a long walking below the northern corners of the Cairngorms, and then I'm going through a rather interesting defile in the landscape called Calamine Gap. It's an old glacial overflow, and I just love it. It acts as a sort of an entrance, a portal to the other Cairngorms, the Larrigrew and the big long slopes of Bray Riach. But if you're not into boulder hopping, then you might want to think of maybe taking another route. It's a great little feature, this, and I probably exaggerate the difficulties, but in winter time, the ankle breaking potential here is absolutely enormous. This is the Larrigrew, the great pass that bites its way through this central massif of the Cairngorms, all the way from Speyside in the north to Deeside in the south. And it's just wonderful from this point, before we drop down into the pass itself, looking at just winding its way through the hills there with the glistening crags of Craig and Lechen, Lutcher's Crag up on that side, and the long slopes of Bray Riach on the other. Now the Larrigrew translates as the gloomy pass, but as you can see, on a day like this, it's anything but gloomy. You get a real sense of the scale, the depth of the Larrigrew from up here. And not only the Larrigrew, but you get a real sense of the scale of these hills, because they're vast, sprawling mountains. Now way ahead of us up there, above the Larrigrew, you can see Ben Macdui, which is the 2nd highest mountain in Britain. And here on the other side of the Larrigrew, we're just about to hit the final slopes of Bray Riach, the 3rd highest mountain in Britain. This quarry below me here, Angarth Quarry of Bray Riach, is I reckon one of the finest quarries in Scotland. And of course what makes it so great is its spaciousness. And these two hills behind me here, Cairntowel and Scurin Lochanunia. Scurin Lochanunia means the peak of the Green Lochan, that Lochan you can see across there. But over, just to the left of Cairntowel, you can see just peeking out a hill called Potton John, or it's commonly known as Devil's Point. And the story is Queen Victoria was out walking one day with her great friend and gillie, John Brown, and she says to him, "John, what's the name of that mountain there?" And he said, "That's Potton John, ma'am." And she says, "What does it mean?" And he had to think very, very quickly, because the literal translation is penis of the devil, and you can't really say that to the Queen. So he was quick thinking, he says, "Devil's Point, ma'am," and the name has stuck to this day. And then sometime later, a kind of interfering cleric came and decided he had to sort of equal up the spiritual balance a wee bit. And he decided he was going to call Scurin Lochanunia Angel's Peak. And sadly, that's kind of stuck as well, even though it's got absolutely nothing to do with angels. Way back in the 1960s, reindeer were brought over to the Cairngorms from Lapland, Sweden. Nowadays, most of them are kept in an enclosure down in Glenmore, but sometimes you can see the odd one that's, I think, maybe escaped from the enclosure. And it's wonderful to see them high up here in Bray Riach, in their kind of natural habitat, this kind of Arctic tundra. Well, that's it, Bray Reach at 1296 metres. And you know, I can never think of this summit as being the summit of a mountain. I always think of it more of a wavelet or an eddy on this vast ocean of the Bray Reach Plateau. And not very far from here, down in the plateau, you'll find a little spring of water coming through the ground. And it's as though the plateau has harnessed all the rainfall and by some unseen forces has pushed it up through the ground, where it then falls over a cliff down into Angarth Quarry and right down the Larrigrew, eventually to Aberdeen. And it's called the River Dee. So next time you're in Aberdeen at the mouth of the Dee, just think of the birth of that river, high here on the wild and lonely places.
It's now 2:30 in the afternoon, and here in Kinlochleven there's a medical centre and a race checkpoint. Soon we'll expect the fastest runners through.
But right now, the leading competitors are still struggling uphill. With the aptly named Devil's Staircase at the start of Glencoe to negotiate, this is the most gruelling section of the race. Hanging on to third place is Richie Cunningham.
It's pretty tough. Let's just keep the rhythm going, because you're getting into a marathon to go, so psychologically it's a milestone.
Meanwhile, further along the course and still in the lead, Jan Albert Lantinck's nearing the top of the Devil's Staircase, and the man from the flat country has been suffering.
I look smashed 2 times very badly. Okay, now it's going downhill there.
Just a few minutes behind Jan Albert is still Scott Bradley in second place, and he's trying everything he can think of to keep himself going.
It's resorted to the tunes now. I just thought I'll go for it, and I was trying to preserve, but obviously I wasn't preserving a lot, because look at me now. I'll see if I can still run. Cheers.
And still at the head of the women's pack is Sharon Law. She's just approaching the King's House checkpoint at the end of Rannoch Moor.
Are you staying or going through? Are you stopping at all or are you going through?
I'm just going to stop for 5.
Okay,
yeah, well, just I was saying when my girls up, yeah. I'm getting tired and I'm getting a wee bit sore. But after 71 miles, I cannot complain. You know, I just can't. Right, thank you. You can't do this without hurting. Physically, it hurts. So mentally and emotionally, you got to do something to pull you through. I tried singing to make everybody else as much pain as me, but that would just make me more tired. So, no, just staying positive, it really does help. And you're doing a great job as well.
All right then.
It's a long day out here.
Not bad. It's a nice place.
It's beautiful. And that's the other upside.
Take care now.
Yeah, thank you.
The West Highland Way race has a long and distinguished history, and one that started with the very first contest over a quarter of a century ago in 1985. It began as a personal challenge between just 2 men, Duncan Watson and Bobby Shields. The 2 rivals set out from Mulgai, neither giving an inch. Amazingly, they were still neck and neck as they started over Rannoch Moor. But then, the unexpected happened.
We're both struggling coming up the Devil's Staircase, and we're doing a good time. We knew it was fast, and we were both really suffering as you begin to, because it's all mental after about 60 miles anyway. So we just shook hands virtually at the bottom of the Devil's Staircase and then worked together to help one another rather than maybe psyching one another, trying to psych one another off and maybe disadvantaging ourselves, you know. I think we're destroying ourselves, you know, working against one another rather than together. The feeling of elation was not like anything else that I've done in my life. You know, it was quite unique. You know, it's still looking back on it. It was quite a unique experience. Same with Bobby. He says the same.
And that spirit of cooperation still continues amongst today's runners, even when they're competing against each other. As the front runners now approach Kinlochleven, it's still Jan Albert Lantinck in the lead.
So he is the Dutch 100-kilometre champion. And at 52, it's an incredible performance to be leading this race so far. So he's continuing, not bothering to stop at the checkpoint. And all he's done is taken 3 or 4 chocolates, half a mouthful of water, and off he goes. That is pretty tough going. Coming in second and third place, they're about 5 minutes behind Jan Albert. And Lucy Calhoun, Richie's support team, who holds the women's record for this course, is coming to take them in transition, make sure they're well fed. So Richie, how are you coping?
Okay. Stomach's a bit of a struggle trying to eat, but it's okay, you know, it's getting there, forcing it down. The descents are hard, but I'm climbing good, so the next bit should be quite good.
I've got a lot to thank Richie for, he's rescued me.
Looked like you had a tumble as well, did you fall?
No, I had a bit nasty fall, yeah, just tired. I just went off the edge of the path. I find myself going about 10 feet down in the heather. I was very lucky, absolutely no harm.
So what, the moral support from Richie dragged you on a little bit?
Absolutely. What a start, he just shouted at me. You know, I'll not repeat what he said, but he just told me to dig in, you know. I was hoping a thunderstorm was going to pass overhead and strike me.
But then your support crew could hit you in the head or something, but good luck in the next.
Thanks very much.
Back at the Devil's Staircase, and for many, the long grind is beginning to tell.
I think when I get into Kinloch Leven, and that'll be a big relief, because that last leg's not too bad. It's another bit of a climb, but then down the other sides into Fort William's a relief.
I'll be glad when this is over. Only a half marathon to go after that.
I really want it to finish now. Just want it all over now.
A bit tired.
Ready?
Sore feet slightly. Nearly at the top. Thanks a lot, thank you.
And the toil continues to the very end. The final 14 miles from Kinloch Leven to Fort William start with a stiff climb up the Larrig Moor. And these hills are quite a contrast for Jan Albert Lantink.
The highest point? A little bit higher.
Yeah. How are you feeling?
Good. But you cannot run me more uphill.
Just behind Jan Albert, still working together on this final ascent, are Richie Cunningham and Scott Bradley.
Glad to get that out of there.
Still feel like you're going well?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Thanks.
We're waiting excitedly here at the finishing line and hoping the runners are going to be with us within the next 10-15 minutes. At the last checkpoint, we heard that there was only 90 seconds difference between the first and second runners, which over a distance of 95 miles is absolutely phenomenal. So it's really, really close and still everything to play for. Really excited here.
Richie Cunningham has run this race 5 or 6 times before and knows the finish very well. Jan Albert has fallen a couple of times and there's blood pouring from open wounds in his knees, so he's struggling a bit. Scott Bradley it looks like he's perked up, so I wouldn't like to place that 1, 2, 3 at all.
We just got an idea of the scale of this race from driving from the start to the finish, and it took us such a long time to drive. It's really incredible that these people are running continuously over that distance, isn't it?
As you know, I've run the race myself, and each year when I drive up as organiser, I just look at the scenery, the landscape changing, the magnitude of the scale of things, and I just can't understand myself how I managed to do it. So, you know, from someone that's done it, it blows my mind each year.
And as the first competitor comes into view, it's clear there's been a major upset in the final few miles of this year's race. In spite of his earlier low, Scott Bradley has pushed ahead of Jan Albert Lantink and is the first runner over the finish line. With a time of 16 hours 11 minutes, just 27 minutes outside the all-time course record. It's a sensational achievement, even if it's not yet sunk in.
Hey, fantastic effort, well done. Thank you very much. You must be absolutely exhausted, are you?
Excuse me, sorry, I didn't mean that on the camera.
How did you manage to put in such an amazing lead at the end there?
I have got a lot to thank Richie Cunningham for, because he turned me around. He just shouted at me as I was going internal, and I was struggling up the Devil's Staircase, and Richie was just storming up there, and he came past and told me, just dig in, Scott, really just shouted at me. Wow, that was close.
And storming over the last few yards, Jan Alberts made it to the finish just 10 minutes after Scott. An amazing achievement on his first ever race through the Scottish mountains.
In Holland we have no hills. I'm glad I'm back in Holland. Everything is flat. The most part enjoy, but I collapsed 3 times. So I was in a very deep bounty beneath.
And were you not tempted to give up at that point?
No. When your mother has a focus on you never give it.
And just 3 minutes behind is Richie Cunningham, taking 3rd place and a hero's welcome.
A bit speechless. I didn't think I'd go that fast.
You've done a fantastic job. You must be really pleased, are you?
Yeah.
Is that your fastest time?
Yeah, by just over 2 hours.
Wow. That's amazing.
Which was last year. So
that's absolutely
the
incredible.
difference a year makes.
How did you find the race this year?
It was hard.
And still smiling, first in for the women with a time of 19 hours 55 is Sharon Law, who is looking every bit as fresh as when she set out. A great achievement, and she's right up there with the fastest men. 14th overall to reach Fort William.
Oh, I'm tired. Tired. The last bit was really tough. Really tough. Just felt really sick. Couldn't hold anything, couldn't eat. So I'm just really weak.
I spoke to you around about...
Yes, just at Chronic Hill.
Yeah,
yes.
Many hours ago, and you've been on a huge journey
some
since
water
then.
or something, please. Thank you.
How's it been since I last saw you?
Really good. Great up until about 80. Then all of a sudden, I just couldn't eat. I just felt so sick.
So what got you through? What kept you going?
I just had to. First lady wanted to break the 20 hours and I knew I was close.
And a great result for Sharon. 19 hours 55 minutes means she's comfortably within that 20-hour target. And confirmation of the men's results, Richie Cunningham came in 3rd in a time of 16 hours 24. In 2nd place, Jan Albert Lantic's time was 16 hours 21. And snatching 1st place at the very end was Scott Bradley with a time of 16 hours 11 minutes. And congratulations too to everyone who took part in this mammoth race. But this year's race was tinged with sadness. Shortly after the event, organiser Dario Melaragni died whilst out walking on Loch Nagar. To commemorate him and celebrate his achievements, many of his friends and West Highland Way racers gathered to watch a preview of this programme.
I first got to know Dario when he first ran the race. I think it was 1994 or 1995. He was a total character, just breath of fresh air coming to join all these other enthusiastic madcap people doing this iconic event up the West Highland Way. Up until then, a lot of the runners have been people who you'd expect to do that sort of thing. But Dario was from a slightly different mould. He was from a running background, but not the sort of fine thoroughbred. But he had that total enthusiasm, and he understood that this sort of thing was just natural. Anyone can do these things, just with a bit of application and enthusiasm.
I think he was incredibly welcoming to everyone. It didn't really matter if you were particularly good or not. Some of these sports events, you know, they all love you if you're the winner and you're a star. With Dario, everyone got the same treatment.
Well done. Excellent. Yeah, oh, you're very welcome. You deserve it. Can you come?
He got as much pleasure from presenting your Finishers Award at the end of the event as the person receiving it, whether you finished up at the front of the field or whether you finished right at the back.
Your favourite?
Thanks, mate. Thanks very much, mate.
There's 2 qualities that Dario embodied, was enthusiasm and just total selflessness. And just the ability, the way you push yourself to achieve things in the physical, he had that same enthusiasm and willingness to go out of his way to help people achieve their dreams as well.
Dario Melaragni, remembered there by his friends. Well, that's it for this month's adventure show. Next month we're in the Mona Lea Mountains following competitors in one of Scotland's most popular events, the Corryarrick Challenge. That's 43 mountainous miles of running and road biking. Please join us for that if you can. Until then, bye for now.